This article was originally published in issue 3, 2013, of Red Flag Manuscript. It has been a full 10 years. We summarize the main contents of this article by Shenming, then Vice President of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, into the following 5 points. First, in today's world, the high-tech information technology revolution led by the United States has made capital employ more and more people. Less, but the more competitive the price and quality of the product, the more global the market for the product. So-called white-collar lawyers and accountants are likely to feel the pain that assembly line workers have felt for decades. Second, the widespread use of the internet has accelerated the flow of international capital exponentially. The vast majority of ordinary people who are getting poorer no longer have much money for the rich to extract. The emergence and exacerbation of the basic economic phenomenon of rich countries and rich people getting richer and poor countries and poor people getting poorer will inevitably make the iron history of wherever there is oppression, there will be resistance, as Comrade Mao Zedong said. The law manifests itself more and more fully. The vast majority of the middle-income class is what we usually call the white-collar class. These people are young, highly educated, and master various high-tech technologies. When these people are thrown into the ranks of poverty, they combine with the class of blue-collar workers who are already in the ranks of poverty. It is very different from previous economic crises. Third, the internet, as the main symbol of the high-tech revolution, will also make the dissemination of advanced revolutionary theories more convenient and rapid, allowing scattered ghosts of socialist revival around the world to grow wings that spread and gather rapidly around the world, will inevitably create batch after batch of thinkers, theorists, politicians, revolutionaries, military strategists, etc., who are more dangerous than citizens of Blanky to international monopoly capital, and then develop and grow into advanced theoretical armed forces. The ranks of the working class and working people. Fourth, some scholars point out that there is no need to wait for a modern Marx, as Marxism is not outdated. The author thinks so. It's just that in today's world, there are already countless Marxes of all sizes, medium and small, who are inheriting the cause of Marx in those days and writing vigorously in every corner of the world. The Marxist theory, which represents the fundamental interests of the vast majority of human beings and ultimately the fundamental interests of all mankind, is bound to be reborn around the world. Fifth, the global financial crisis that started in 2008 is far from over and is still evolving. In developed capitalist countries, the Occupy Wall Street movement has just begun. The deeper and more comprehensive economic and social crisis in the world and the more serious challenges faced by socialist countries are yet to come. The road must be tortuous and difficult, but the future must also be bright and brilliant. Now this public number is republished. The international financial crisis that broke out in 2008 has not yet bottomed out and is deepening, while economic globalization, world multipolarization and technological revolution are also developing in depth in the international financial crisis. Many politicians, economists, and entrepreneurs in the world believe that the new technological revolution around the world is promoting the great development of productivity, which will effectively guide the world economy out of the crisis and show a strong recovery trend. However, when people are cheering for the world's scientific and technological revolution, we have reason to be worried about the capitalist production relations by observing the current economic and political status and development trend of the world today with the basic viewpoint of Marxist political economy. On August 18, 2012, the United States New York Times website published an article titled "The Wave of Handy Robot Applications is Changing the Global Industry," saying that in a factory in Dresden, the Netherlands, 128 robot arms are very dexterous and fast speed equipped with electric shaver. These robotic arms work 3 shifts a day, 365 days a year. This factory has only a few dozen workers per shift, while the Zhuhai factory with the same output in China has 10 times as many workers. In November 2012, an article "The Third Industrial Revolution" published on the website of the bi-monthly magazine Foreign Policy pointed out that at the end of the 19th century, about half of Americans were engaged in agriculture. By 2000, this proportion had fallen below 2%. Both of the above two pieces of news prove that the Third Industrial Revolution and the Fourth Scientific and Technological Revolution, which combine information technology and advanced manufacturing technology to bring about a huge increase in productivity, are emerging on a global scale. This also fully demonstrates the power of science and technology as the primary productive force. After the drastic changes in the Soviet Union and the East, the Western world led by the United States dominated economic globalization and promoted a new high-tech revolution, which seemed to be invincible. Some people are often amazed at the high and new technologies that the Western world, headed by the United States, possesses and penetrates into its economic, political, cultural, and military fields, and thus lack confidence in the future and revival of Marxism and world socialism. Of course, the above ideas are reasonable in a certain space and time period. But any truth is conditional. If we put the view that science and technology are the primary productive forces into the framework of the current global dominant capitalist production relations, and put it into the long river of history, use the Marxist productivity to determine the production relations, and the production relations react to the productive forces. Under certain conditions, considering the basic point of view that production relations play a decisive role in the reaction of productivity, we may draw the opposite conclusion. Let us make a brief analysis of the high-tech owned by the Western world headed by the United States to see how the hegemony of high-tech operates within the framework of capitalist production relations, and how it will eventually weaken or even bring about the end of the basic system of capitalism. First, in today's world, the high-tech information technology revolution led by the United States has reduced the number of people employed by capital, while the price and quality of products have become more competitive, so the market for products has become more global. From high-tech products such as modern transportation and communication tools and computer software to simple daily necessities such as toothpaste and washing powder, those internationally renowned brands are mostly monopolized in the world. The continuous development of high-tech and the emergence of high-quality and cheap products have made international monopoly capital accumulate a lot of wealth through excessive monopoly profits or small profits but quick turnover. The abnormal accumulation of capital and strong strength promote new scientific and technological progress within a certain range. Such a cycle fully embodies the economic law that capitalist competition will inevitably produce monopoly. Second, the widespread use of the internet has accelerated the flow of international capital exponentially. International capital can be separated from the real economy and production links. In the field of finance and a large number of financial derivatives, with a single click of a small mouse, it can plunder a lot of wealth from other countries and others in an instant, so as to realize its own value. Progression of growth. In a certain sense, when capitalist production relations dominate, all financial derivatives such as stock markets, futures, exchange rates, and various commodities in the world today are organic components of the unified world casino and international financial monopoly capital. In such one, the globalization of the product market and the high monopoly of international finance are a two-pronged approach that sucks the poor and the poor, making the poor more and more poor, and the rich fewer and richer. Almost all countries all are getting poorer, and the fundamental sign of getting poorer is that the sovereign debt of all countries is increasing sharply. In order to maintain a relatively high growth rate of global GDP and a certain employment rate, currency issuance in almost all countries in the world is implementing rounds of quantitative easing, but the vast majority of these loose currencies eventually entered extreme account of a minority. According to data provided by economist Emmanuel Seth, in 2010, 93% of the national income of the United States flowed into the hands of the richest 1% of the population. Stand still. In other words, the vast majority of ordinary people who are getting poorer no longer have much money for the rich to extract. This is the inevitable result of the contradiction between the globalization of production, including the globalization of financial products, and the private ownership of means of production. Our party has repeatedly judged that the international situation is undergoing profound changes. It should be said that the polarization between the relative and absolute poverty of the vast majority of people and the sudden wealth of a very small number of people on a global scale is the most profound and fundamental change in the profound changes in the international situation. This change is the basis and foundation of all other changes. Root, and all other changes are derivatives of this fundamental change. In a certain sense, the Stone Age determined the form of primitive society, the Bronze Age determined the form of slave society, the Iron Age determined the form of feudal society, and the age of steam engines and electricity determined the form of capitalist society. The high-tech revolution dominated by information technology, that is, the rapid development of the information economy era, is very likely to be the latest production tool to promote the development of new social forms, namely socialism and communism, on a global scale. Its emergence and rapid development, on the one hand, accumulated rich material conditions for the new social form. Intensified, it will inevitably make the iron law of history that where there is oppression, there will be resistance, that Comrade Mao Zedong said more fully, and it will inevitably make Marxism, the most advanced ideological theory in human history so far, be greatly improved. Innovation and development. Third, the Internet, as the main symbol of the high-tech revolution, will also make the dissemination of advanced revolutionary theories more convenient and rapid, allowing scattered ghosts of socialist revival around the world to grow wings that spread and gather rapidly around the world. This will undoubtedly help greatly promote the resistance and struggle of the working class and other working people around the world from freedom to self-action, and further unite more closely. The Western world, headed by the United States, has formed a complete set of mature technologies and methods in the evolution of the Soviet Union. Among them, the use of radio stations, television, and newspapers played a unique and important role. For example, many false information and wrong things were used to repeatedly indoctrinate the Soviet people and convinced many people. But the Internet is a new type of media that appeared in human history. Its biggest feature is not its fast speed and large capacity, but the interaction between publishers and audiences. When information publishers publish false information and wrong things, those in the know may immediately expose and refute them. This kind of interaction is precisely what other media such as radio, television, and newspapers lack. Of course, the publishers of world cultural hegemony can control these exposures and rebuttals within a certain range, but they can only achieve results within a certain range and within a certain period of time. Of course, there are all kinds of opinions on the Internet, which can be said to be mixed with mud and sand, but in a certain sense, this has also opened up a smooth way for 100 flowers to bloom and 100 schools of thought to contend. People can compare, identify, and improve in contention, which is of great benefit to improving the theoretical level of the whole society in all countries in the world. In the long run, fundamentally speaking, it may bring a complete socialist social form closer and closer to us. At any time, social productive forces exist in certain social production relations. Within the framework of socialist production relations, science and technology are the primary productive forces, which undoubtedly have eternal charm. Within the framework of capitalist production relations, under certain conditions, capitalist production relations can protect and promote the existence and development of high-tech productive forces, but when it develops to a certain stage and for a certain period of time, capitalist production relations will inevitably cause the masses the relative or even absolute poverty of the masses will inevitably not be able to accommodate the rapid growth of productivity brought about by new technology, and will inevitably inhibit or even destroy the existence and development of productivity. Within the framework of capitalist production relations, it is not an eternal truth that science and technology are primary productive forces. It can be seen that the high-tech revolution led by the information revolution and the economic globalization led by the United States are undoubtedly a double-edged sword for the international monopoly capitalist class. On the one hand, it promotes the development of productive forces in capitalist society to a certain extent, and within a period of time, can ease the basic contradictions within capitalist society to a certain extent. On the other hand, when we fully estimate the vitality of capitalism at the same time, it must be noted that with the further development of economic globalization and the high-tech revolution, it is not only impossible to eliminate, but will further intensify the contradiction between the socialization of production and the capitalist private ownership of means of production on a global scale. With the further intensification of this contradiction, the contradiction between capitalist production and consumption, the contradiction between the monopoly bourgeoisie and the proletariat and the working people, the contradiction between the Western developed countries and the vast third world countries, and the contradiction between the developed capitalist countries' worldwide problems such as the contradictions between the world and the further deterioration of the ecological environment on a global scale will also further intensify. These contradictions and problems cannot be resolved within the framework of the capitalist system. Further strengthening of hegemonism and power politics will only intensify these contradictions and difficulties. The above analysis has enabled us to further deepen our understanding of the laws of the replacement of human social forms revealed by the founders of Marxism. That is to say, the rapid development of economic globalization and the high-tech revolution dominated by information technology will inevitably lead to the exacerbation of the situation that rich countries and rich people are getting richer, and poor countries and poor people are getting poorer and poorer. Will inevitably create batch after batch of thinkers, theorists, politicians, revolutionaries, military strategists, etc. who are more dangerous than citizens of Blanky to international monopoly capital, and then develop and grow into a group armed with advanced theories. The ranks of the working class and working people. As the ranks of bourgeois grave diggers continue to grow, the future and destiny of capitalism can be imagined. It is in this sense and from the general trend of historical development that the rapid development of economic globalization and the high-tech revolution dominated by information technology is not farther and farther away from socialism and communism, but on the contrary, should be getting closer. Of course, no one denies that this is a relatively long process, in which there may be greater or even greater twists and turns. It was also seen by the discerning minds of bourgeois thinkers, theoreticians, statesmen, and strategists. In an article published in November 2012, David Rothko, CEO of the U.S. Foreign Policy, pointed out that once upon a time, the U.S. economy grew at the same time as the productivity of American workers, bringing about growth in employment and wealth at all levels of society. However, in the first decade of the century, this relationship no longer holds true. GDP grows, productivity rises, while employment slows, median income falls, and the rich get richer. The enormous gains in productivity brought about by the happy marriage of information technology and advanced manufacturing technology will have unprecedentedly dire effects on job creation. In other words, lawyers and accountants are likely to feel the pain that assembly line workers have felt for decades. Capitalism and the bourgeoisie pin the stability of the Western world society on the continuous growth of the so-called middle class, that is, the middle-income class. The basis of Marxism and the working class for the inevitable victory of socialism is based on the fact that the middle-income class in bourgeois countries will inevitably appear more and more class divisions with the deepening of the international financial crisis, that is, there will inevitably be moreover the fact that man is plunged into absolute poverty. According to the statistics of the Federal Reserve, due to the sharp decline in housing prices and stock markets, the median net worth of American households shrank by 39% between 2007 and 2010. 50% of the middle class declined during the economic recession compared with their original economic status even dropped significantly. With the deepening of the polarization between the rich and the poor, as the purchasing power of the general public in various countries gradually declines to a certain extent, and a large number of enterprises gradually go bankrupt to a certain extent, when the vast middle-income class is thrown into the ranks of absolute poverty, when the sovereign debt of various countries when the unbearable limit is broken through, large-scale social turmoil will be inevitable, and the working class will also continue to grow and develop in the struggle. What's more, most of the middle-income class mentioned here are what we usually call white-collar class. These people are young, highly educated, and master various high-tech technologies. When these people are thrown into the ranks of poverty, they combine with the class of blue-collar workers who are already in the ranks of poverty. It is very different from previous economic crises. On September 17, 2011, thousands of people marched and demonstrated in New York to carry out the Occupy Wall Street action. The passionate people shouted "Revolution now, 99% of the United States is poor, 1% is rich." Slogans such as "Government should be run by the people, not the rich" are rooted in the polarization of wealth possession and income distribution, and some clues can be seen in the form of struggle. It can be asserted that if other major countries in the world can correctly deal with the deepening international financial crisis, the domestic and foreign debts of the United States will be further aggravated, and the polarization between the rich and the poor will be further intensified. There will inevitably be large-scale outbreaks within the year. In a sense, the Occupy Wall Street movement has just begun. Since 2010, large-scale demonstrations and riots have taken place in economically and socially stable countries such as the United States, Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Israel, and other capitalist heartlands. This phenomenon deserves our attention and study. We are thorough historical materialists. We should not only see the objective conditions provided by history, but also give full play to the subjective initiative of our communists. As long as we have firm confidence, correct ideological and political lines, and correct strategic strategies, we will surely overcome various difficulties and achieve various brilliant victories that history can be proud of and record. For the United States, which currently has all kinds of hegemony, we must of course learn from its various strengths and must not reject them all, but there is no reason to be afraid. Only by despising the United States strategically, valuing the United States tactically, and learning from the United States scientifically and technologically can we coexist peacefully with it. Comrade Mao Zedong said that imperialism and all reactionaries are paper tigers. This is because Mao Zedong not only saw the power of the people, he also saw the contradictions of imperialism and reactionary self-existing and ultimately insurmountable self-destruction. This contradiction is the philosophical basis that determines the nature of its paper tiger. Based on this, our real communists have no reason to fear the United States strategically. However, few people expected that such a majestic and huge hegemony of the United States would fall into the quagmire of the small Iraq War. Our Chinese nation has gone through many catastrophes, but we always emerge from a desperate situation, and even the phoenix is reborn from the ashes, and finally creates one after another in the history of the Chinese nation and even the world. There are antinomies in Western classical philosophy, and antinomy in ancient Chinese philosophy. True communists have historical materialism and dialectical materialism. Fully understanding and mastering this law will produce great confidence, great wisdom, and great strategy. While hegemonism and power politics have been greatly strengthened on a global scale, they have also intensified the fundamental contradiction between the socialization of production and capitalist private ownership of means of production, the unlimited expansion of production, and the effective needs of society. The intensification of this fundamental contradiction will inevitably call for the revival of socialism in the world. The end of financial hegemony, military hegemony, cultural hegemony, and technological hegemony is the revival of socialism, which is an irresistible historical law. It is entirely possible to predict that the global financial crisis that began in 2008 is far from over, and is still evolving, and may even have just begun. The deeper and more comprehensive economic and social crises worldwide and the socialist countries, the more severe challenges thus faced are likely to lie ahead. Undoubtedly, the road must be tortuous and difficult, but the future must also be bright and brilliant. The inevitable victory of socialism and the inevitable demise of capitalism announced by Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto are inevitable. John Pepper, director of the Foreign Policy Focus Program at the American Policy Institute, recently pointed out, "We are waiting for a modern Marx who can come up with sharp criticisms of existing economic orthodoxy and plans for change." If the next Hey Marx is writing somewhere that a very different economic system may emerge in the future. Some scholars have pointed out that there is no need to wait for a modern Marx, as Marxism is not outdated. The author thinks so. It's just that in today's world, there are already countless Marxists, big, middle and small, who are inheriting the cause of Marx in the past, and are writing hard in every corner of the world. With the evolution of the international financial crisis of capitalism, the Marxist theory, which represents the fundamental interests of the vast majority of mankind and ultimately the fundamental interests of all mankind, will inevitably be reborn around the world. If we look through the history of the Second World War filled with gunpowder and the history of the National Democratic Liberation Movement surging in the world in the 1950s and 1960s, we can see many thinkers, politicians, revolutionaries, and military strategists who have shined through the ages. It can be predicted that with the arrival of the revival of the magnificent world socialist theory and movement, and with the maturity and growth of the working class in all countries in the world, batches of such powerful leaders will inevitably grow up. The interests, wisdom, and struggle of the vast majority of people in the world call for and create world-class thinkers, politicians, revolutionaries and military strategists, who will lead the vast majority of people in the world to work together for the civilization and progress of all mankind. The masses of the people are the ultimate decisive force in the development of history, but at the same time, we also recognize the important role played by the leaders of those classes in the process of historical development. This role often plays a decisive role under certain conditions and within a period of time. Lenin's doctrine of leader, party, class, masses has eternal power until the realization of communism.